Hello, this is Senator Barack Obama, and today is Tuesday, September 26th, 2006. We're in the last week that the Senate is in session before the October recess, and this is usually silly season around Washington because everybody's thinking about the election and thinking about politics. But there are a couple of issues that I want to mention, a piece of good news and a piece of bad news, because I think it gives you an indication of sort of what my daily life is like around here. We take one step forward and one step back at any given period of time. First, the good news. I just got back from the White House on a beautiful late September day where we had the signing of a bill that I had introduced with Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma called the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. Some of you guys have heard of this bill. The concept was very simple. Basically, a lot of folks don't know how federal dollars are spent, and as a consequence, although the vast majority of money is spent properly, you will see some money spent on things like the infamous Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska. And so we made a decision to see if we could improve the transparency of the budgeting process with a real simple tool, and that is to make sure that all federal spending, contracts, what's called earmarks, which is basically pork barrel spending, anything over $25,000 would have to be posted on an easily accessible website that would be searchable, a database that would collate and gather all the information about federal spending in a single, one-stop, easily accessible place so that not only journalists and advocacy groups, but also voters could find out what's happening in the federal budget. We had sort of a bumpy road trying to get the bill passed, despite the fact that Tom Coburn, Republican, myself, Democrat, had put together a terrific list of bipartisan sponsors. There were some of the people who had been involved in the appropriations process for a long time, had seniority, and were comfortable with business as usual, put what's called a hold on the bill, basically weren't allowing it to be called to the floor. Thanks to bloggers on both the left and the right, and newspaper editorials all across the country, the hold was finally flushed out and released, and we were able to get the bill passed. And so today, George Bush signed the bill, and I was proud to be in attendance. We think that this bill is not going to completely transform the budgeting process, but what it's going to do is it's going to start us moving in the right direction. It's one important step in more transparency and more accountability to the federal budget. And one of the things that I always say is that those of us who consider ourselves progressive and believe in government have at least as much of an investment, if not more, in making sure that government dollars are well spent. Because if they aren't, those are dollars that we could have saved, that could have been going to early childhood education, that could be going to making sure that we have adequate environmental protection. Anytime money is wasted, that not only is money that could have gone to a good cause, but it also further undermines people's sense that government is responsive. And I think that ultimately is bad for progressives. So I was very pleased with this legislation, and I'm hopeful that in a couple of years we're going to be able to find out where our tax dollars are being spent without having to break a lot of sweat. On the negative side, some of you know that I've been working on the issue of chemical plant security for quite some time. And the fact is that there are 111 facilities in the United States where a worst-case scenario attack on a chemical plant could threaten more than 1 million people, and that's according to the EPA. 2 of these facilities are within Chicago's city limits, and Illinois has at least 11 facilities where a large-scale chemical release could threaten more than 1 million people. So I've been working with Senator Frank Lautenberg, Democrat of New Jersey, as well as my own colleague from Illinois, Dick Durbin, and Bob Menendez from New Jersey, to try to put together the strongest possible chemical plant safety and security act. basically following some of the recommendations that were made by the 9/11 Commission, and including something called inherently safer technology. The basic idea is that chemical plants would be required, in addition to having fences and security guards at their chemical plants, to also see, are there ways of creating technology that is safer than the technology that exists right now, or at least less vulnerable to attack. So, for example, if a chemical plant uses something like chlorine, which in gas form is extraordinarily deadly, are there substitutes that a chemical plant could use that would work just as well in the industrial process but would not pose as big of a hazard to people in surrounding communities? We had that component in our bill. We were hoping to be able to move it forward. We found out this week that House and Senate Republicans had negotiated their own chemical plant bill that did not include this inherently safer technology. Worse yet, it allows potentially for the federal government to preempt states that have created better chemical security laws, and it excludes, for example, regulation on water treatment facilities, which obviously could potentially be a target for terrorist attacks. So it's a watered-down bill. It's not as strong as we had hoped. It is a concession to the chemical industry, which has a lot of powerful lobbyists here in Washington, and I think is an example of how sometimes special interests get in the way of doing what's best for the American people. All of which brings me to the elections on November 7th. I think it was Justice Brandeis who once said that the most important office in a democracy is the office of citizen. And that means you guys. Hope you're getting involved and engaged in this upcoming election. It's going to be a big one. With that, let me sign off. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.